afternoon. This is Miss Vaccaro. Welcome to Career Day. I am here with Eric Ford. I am honored to have him with us today. He is a precious jewelry buyer for Neiman Marcus, and he's here just to share some information with you guys. So please welcome Eric. Thank you for being with us today, Eric.
It's a pleasure, but let me start by saying, please always call me Eric. Do not call me Mr. Ford, as you just introduced yourself. I feel like my dad.
So, yes, understood. So you are just Eric, and we love it, so thank you.
Yeah.
So we will get right to business. Tell us a little bit about what do you do? So I know a lot of our students are always interested in wanting to be a buyer. What is a buyer? What does it entail? Tell us all about your day.
We're gonna go with all about my day pre-COVID. How about that? Because COVID has been a whole different experience. But about my day, well, really, more people would be surprised to find out that a lot of my day is really planning out marketing, working with the stores on finding product, spending time with vendors on developing product and understanding from a merchandising perspective what we need. I love working with artists, and most of my vendors are smaller brands. They're not like the Chanel and the Van Cleef or Cartier. They're smaller brands than that, but some of them are sizable. But you're still dealing with a person, and their skill set is really the art and is really the jewelry that they design. And sometimes it's not so much about the business side of it behind it. So, I find myself having to, be a part of that discussion more than I plan, but it's necessary to continue to drive the business. But a lot of it is also looking at numbers. I walk in every Monday and I look at what my sales were. I look at what my sales were by vendor. I look at what my sales were by vendor, by location, and we have 37 stores. And then I look at those top vendors, and then I look at what the top 10 items were for each of those vendors. And then we project out to make sure we have enough of that product based on the current trend. See, now that part of it, people, when the students are sitting around thinking, oh, I want to do that. Well, that part of it's just a grind. You're just pumping the numbers out. But you know what? When you're the person who's buying the product, you're driven because you're passionate about making the sales happen. So in that sense, even though you may not like having to deal with the numbers, that may not be what your passion is right there, but you still want to be successful, and you want to make sure that that earring that you purchased 500 of, which I never do that, but 500 of, you want to make sure that that's selling. So yes, you do log in and look at the sales for that, and you do figure out the best way to make sure that it's happening. So your perspective changes once you're in the role a bit. Did I answer that question, or did I go off on too many tangents?
No. That was actually amazing, because there were so many points that I had, and I'm like, yes, it's about the numbers and it's about the Excel spreadsheets, but it's also about being creative and thinking about what is your consumer, what do they want, and will this work or will this not work? So
exactly.
Makes sense. So you're a buyer. How long have you been doing this? Tell us a little bit about.
I've been in precious jewelry for 15 years. I've been with Neiman Marcus for a little over 30 years. And I've done a variety of things since I've been with the company. When I started with the company, I started through their EDP program. And so I came right out of college and joined. And then I was an assistant buyer in an area called gift galleries, where I was the assistant buyer with crystal, and I had like Waterford crystal and Baccarat crystal. I didn't know a thing about crystal, but I learned. And then I became a manager, and I moved to our Denver location, and I managed men's sportswear there. And then I left Denver and moved back to Texas, and I was a part of, way back then it was called mail order, and that was when we had catalogs and the Christmas catalog and all the other catalogs. And I was there when we first started, when online was a concept, and I was there when we transitioned to online, and then after that I became a shoe buyer, and I did that for 2 years, and then I was a designer jewelry buyer. And as a designer jewelry buyer, I bought Lagos and John Hardy and silver vendors, a lot of them. And then I became a precious jewelry buyer. And that's where I've been ever since. And I actually, this is in most cases, I change jobs every 3 years. And that's what you kind of do when you're, motivated to move up the ladder. But I got to precious jewelry and I became very happy and very content with where I was. And the challenges, sometimes people need a new challenge every 3 years or so, 2 to 3 years. I found that working with who I worked with, that I was constantly challenged just to keep moving the needle and grow the business. And I loved working with this group of artists so much that it became a fun job. And I had great travel too. So I couldn't, I traveled to Italy and I traveled to Switzerland. I was in New York about 5 times a year. California, I was, Vegas, Scottsdale. And then I traveled when we opened stores too. So it was a really good gig before COVID, Not that it's a bad gig now, but I'm not traveling anywhere. Let's just put it that way. So it's a good gig from my loft.
Exactly. I know. And once again, so many points that you brought up. One thing that resonated with me is that students are always asking, okay, well, what do I need to do to get here? Or, what do I have to major in? And what I try to explain is that you're constantly evolving, and what you start in for the most part is not going to be what you end up doing. And I like your career path shows that. And I feel like every position and every job and every place that you travel to brings you to where you are today. You can't do what you're doing today without doing all of those other things before. And also I feel like you don't know what you like until you try it. So once you know, then okay, this is what I want to do. And I feel like now you're at the point where, okay, you're in a good place and this is what you love and you found your passion.
And that brings up a point for me. I have to interview next week 2 candidates coming in for EDP. And so they are coming out of college and wanting to join the Neiman Marcus EDP class. So what we look for and they tell us to look for in those students is really something that says you were methodical about what you did and that you had some passion for what you did. Whether you majored in, education or marketing or fashion merchandising, I majored in finance. I use finance but it's not a financial, it's not like I'm on Wall Street or something like that. So, but most of the people that I work with, most of them actually have degrees in marketing. A lot of them do have degrees in business, but it is not required. The only thing you have to be able to do is math. But it's not a complicated math, and they teach you basically the formulas and things that you need to do. So that's the only real criteria, is that you can understand what a percentage means and how to do percentages. But really, you just have to be able to walk in and sit down and say, this is how I chose my major. And then I decided, if you change your major, because I changed mine at least twice, and then I decided that this is what I was going to do. But you are doing it because you decided, I wanted to do this instead, and I set a goal and achieved a goal. And that's really what we're looking for from young people, because we know you haven't lived your life. You don't know what life's going to unfold in front of you. So how could you, the only people who can do that are like doctors and lawyers. They're the ones who kind of I wanted to be a doctor forever and I just fell into it. The rest of us, we kind of go off to college and we get pulled in a few different directions. Our passions are struck in different ways, and you find different things. But I would say whatever you do it well. And then you come and you knock on the door and you say, okay, this is what I've done. This is what I've done well. And this is what I want to do well for you.
That's amazing. And that was my next question. And you totally answered it before, because I was going to say, what do our students need when they're graduating? And what are you looking for when you're hiring? And what I explain to my students, you said methodical. I always say mindful. It's like, whatever you're doing, you need to be mindful, and people can see if you have a passion or not. So if you are so passionate about something and you explain it to us, then it's like, okay, this is amazing. Yes. So it is about their experience, but more importantly, how much experience can you have as a high school student? So Exactly. They're doing internships. Now with COVID, things have obviously changed a lot. But it's about the passion, and it's about the drive and wanting to learn something new, or wanting to apply what you're learning into a business. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and exactly what we've been telling our students. What would be something that you dread about your day? What is your least favorite thing?
Zoom calls.
100%.
Not this one, but I was looking at my calendar yesterday and I was like, I've spent 5 hours on Zoom calls, like one after another. Anyway, that's today. Pre-COVID, what do I dread about the day? Really, I think I mean, honestly, I could say that like I said, I enjoyed my job. So going to work was fun. So I didn't dread much. The harder things are when people have a lot of passion with what they've designed, and they come to you and they want you to pick up their line, and it's just not right for you. And that's sometimes it's heartbreaking. Sometimes they're so obstinate that you're like, okay, done, goodbye. But that's the hardest part, is when you have to really say no. And it's something maybe that's beautiful that they did well, but it's just not right for Neiman Marcus. And sometimes I would like to look at the designers and say, did you do your due diligence in looking to determine what Neiman Marcus sells, or what retailers sell that type of product that you've designed? Because you would find that it's not necessarily right for me. You were taking a leap to come here, so it shouldn't be that surprising. But artists don't think like that. They think, if I design this, everyone will love it.
100%. Yeah, artists have a certain way of operating, and that's why they're artists, and they're amazing at what they do. Yes,
but why they do. And that's the hard part, is when you have to tell someone who has that much invested in something that no, it's not right. So I've kind of learned to do it gently, but that's probably the hardest thing. And then the other hard part is when people come in and they're like, okay, I had to ask someone for a strategy the other day, post-COVID, pre-COVID, the same thing. And they're like, my gift is pretty things, not writing strategies.
Wow. Okay.
That was a quote.
Oh my gosh.
So those are things that you're like, okay, deep breath. All right, well, let's look at your pretty things and let's put a strategy together. Now, as it turns out, they did put something together that I was able to work with, and we were able to accomplish what they wanted. But when you have 75 active vendors, as I do, you cannot do that forever.
Yes. Yeah.
That
brings me to another good point, communication. I feel like communication is key in how we communicate. And our students, they don't like group work a lot of times. They're like, oh, group work, can I just work by myself? And what I try to explain is that in real life, it's all group work. It's just
100%.
Right?
100%, yes.
And you don't always love your group members, or they don't always work the same way. They don't communicate the same way. But I feel like it's so important to be able to know how to navigate on how to effectively communicate, by also, like you said before, saying no, or, when you have to tell someone something that they don't want to hear, but it's all in the delivery of the message and how you say it. Even though what you want to say could be a little different, but how you're saying it, if you want to convey the message correctly, it's all about communication.
It is all about communication and a method of communication. And nowadays there's an emphasis on being inclusive too. So that would mean that everybody has a voice. We are all coming from different perspectives, different backgrounds, and you want to be able to encourage everyone to share their voice, whether you're the leader in the group or a participant in the group. Either way, you have to be respectful of everybody, but at the same time, you want to make sure that you stay on point and that you yourself are respectful and saying things respectfully, but at the same time, getting your point across. I have two assistant buyers, and they, one came out of college and joined Neiman Marcus, and the other one came out of college, joined Neiman Marcus, and then came into EDP later. And the funny thing is, and they're both in their mid-20s, and they love email. That is their desired means of communication. And I have to say to them, did you call? Did you actually we want this done today. Did you actually pick up the phone and call? No, I sent them another email. And I'm like, no, that's not gonna do. And they just laugh at me. They're like, oh, you're so old school. And I'm like, I bet if you pick up that phone and call, you'll find that they didn't read that email yet. They won't maybe until like 5 o'clock. Yeah. And then they pick up the phone and they call and they're like, oh my gosh, they hadn't read my email. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? And so yes, email is an important means of communication. And so you really do need to focus on your writing skills. So, even if you don't think you're a good writer, take an extra class in writing, because that is a very, very important way of communicating nowadays. But also, don't be afraid of that phone. I mean, pick up the phone and call someone and talk to them. That's getting in somebody's face or getting in their ear goes a lot further sometimes than what is in a letter or and please don't text important information, business information. Just pick up the phone and call or write it in an email.
Yes. To all of that. Yes, to all of the above. So many things. So even with emails, I teach like email etiquette. We all do in the school. And it's like, make sure there's a subject line. Make sure you're not writing like you're texting and just putting a you are. Make sure that you read it before you send it, because sometimes it could come off like charged if you're upset about something. And it's, once it's written, it's written. Also, it's so important to speak to people. And if someone calls me, I have to pick up. If someone emails me, I can wait to respond to that email or even open the email up. So, a lot of us, and this is, typical email, but it's like following up on our discussion, and then you write all your points. So whatever was said on the call, just in case anybody thinks something different or they're going to remember it in a different way, it's like, now we have it in writing. But a call is super important. And I think that's how you really get people's attention. So with the transition, I know phones and emails, text, and I know you said that you were doing direct buying originally, and now it's all online. How has e-commerce changed your business?
Oh, e-commerce now is about, for Neiman Marcus in general, I hope I'm not giving out information I shouldn't, but it's about 40% of the business for the company. And it's not as high for precious jewelry, most likely because of the price points. People buying things that are, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 are a little more nervous to buy that online, but they will buy it from Neiman Marcus. Because they trust Neiman Marcus. But it is something that we're having to learn, and it's evolving constantly. So we have monthly updates with our online team that are giving us metrics that most of the time I don't understand, and I have to kind of raise my little hand up there and say, okay, for those of us who don't understand your language, what are you saying exactly? And funny thing is, most of the other buyers are kind of like, thank you for that, because I didn't understand this at all.
Yes.
But and those metrics are changing all the time, and their ability to understand what the customer's buying pattern is today and what we're projecting that it will be, or whatever, that changes all the time. It updates constantly. So, unfortunately, you can't swing the merchandise assortment online the way that the metrics may change. So you just try to understand that information up front and then buy to that projection. So, but marketing online is so different. In fact, we just did a commercial that it wasn't online. Was it online or not? It was with Hulu, and it wasn't really it was on television, but it was also online. That was it. So basically you could go in, and it was a Hulu commercial that came on your phone that I didn't even know they were doing that, and who would have thought to advertise via Hulu? But, there's so many different things on your computer and ways of marketing to you that are being explored that we don't even know about, So it's a constantly evolving thing that you just have to stay up on it. And again, I'm not one of those that sits down and reads all of the marketing studies and everything. That's somebody else's job. I stay in my lane. And my job is to find great jewelry at the right prices and things like that. And then I understand what they tell me from a marketing standpoint. But the good thing is to have a team that listens to you, because they're never 100% correct in what they say, and we're never 100% correct as merchants in what we say. So yeah, we kind of all come together. But you cannot ignore the big machine sitting in front of you called the computer. Yeah. We all owe ourselves to the computer going forward, really. It's a part of our lives, whether you like it or not. So that's why I kind of say, for those people who are like, I want to work alone, it's impossible to be in a silo as a buyer, because you have to work with so many elements of people. And even though you're working with your computer a lot, there is someone providing you with the information. There is someone also giving you providing you with the information you're looking at on your computer. So it's a very involved business with other people. So you can't really be shy. That's another thing that they really do teach you when they're interviewing you, is that you can't be a person who's really shy and afraid to speak your voice, because you have to be able to go and tell people what you need them to do. You have to be able to tell people what you need from them to get your job done. And you have to be able to tell people, what they've done correctly or incorrectly. So those are things that, and even as an assistant coming into the position, let me just prepare you. If you're going to be an assistant, you're going to do a lot of grunt work. You're going to be responsible for a checkbook. So you're the one who tells me, okay, you overspent, we only have X amount of money left. this is where we have to come in. And you're responsible for managing that because you're the ones that writes the orders. So I pick the product, give it to you, you write the orders. You're also the person that's copying and pasting and creating fun little, maybe, well, in my day it was copy and paste. Nowadays, they're creating these things on their computer and they're sending up PDFs that are amazing so that the sales associates, it catches their attention and they know we have this contest going on. We've got this product that's new. But I mean, and you're sitting there, you're thinking to yourself, now how do I know how to do that? The best assistant I ever had was a absolute gem at Excel and at I don't even know what the things he was really good at. He was good at like graphic design, and it was that was one of the things he majored in. But then I had another assistant who didn't major in that, but just took a couple of courses in it, and those type of things. I wish I had the time to do that right now because it would make life so much simpler just to be able to put this together and do that. I mean, and I guess that's where when you were asking, how has the computer changed things and online? All of that is really driven by online and online presentations to customers. Everything has become much more digitalized in how we present. And so, yeah. It just reminded me there's a lot that I need to go back to school and learn how to do. So, I would tell young people, learn it before, you get in there while you're still taking all these classes. Do as much of that as you can. Don't be afraid to explore these things that may not be right in your line of education, but are so helpful in what you might be doing in the future.
Yes. I'm constantly learning and my students are always making fun of me because they're like, you're in school again, miss? What are you doing now? But it's like, there's so much to learn. And if we're not learning, we're not moving forward. And it's like, whether you're taking a course, whether you're learning online, whether you're learning on the job with someone, like it's constant. Every day there's something that we can learn and how to better ourselves. So I feel like it's never ending learning. And I think the more that we feel comfortable doing, the more we can do and we could be better at our jobs also. So I think it's super important. And obviously I'm a teacher, but I think that learning is so important. And I think the industry is like ever changing. So when I started versus now, my classes are completely different. What I'm teaching is different. The fundamentals are the same, but now in this digital era, it's completely transformed.
Yes. I had a designer, Roberto Coin. He said to me one time, in fact, just over the summer, he was doing something. I said, now, how do you know how to do that? He said, Eric, who has this heavy Italian accent, he's from Venice. And he's like, I won't do the Italian accent because I won't do it justice. But basically, he said to me, life is constantly changing. We always have to educate ourselves because we don't want to die stupid.
Yes. I feel like this is the end of the interview. We are perfect. This is all we needed to know. This was the key part, but it's so true, that we're always learning until the day that we're not here anymore. We're always learning.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so.
The day you stop trying to learn is the day you begin to be stupid. Understood.
Yes. Makes sense. I love it. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else that we need? Anything else that you would want to share with our students? One thing that you just touched on was about presenting, and we keep talking about communication. Our students, a lot of times, they don't want to present. Well, they'll say, they'll do an amazing deck, but then they don't want to speak in front of the class, whether it's on Zoom or whether it's in front of the audience. And I also try to explain that you're presenting forever. It's always presenting, whether you're presenting in a boardroom, whether you're presenting to your staff, to your team, but presenting is super important in order to be successful.
It is, and you're actually speaking to a person who hates doing it. I have had to learn to do it. I was one of those that I was always afraid of when I stood up and if they had more than 25 people there, that I could forget what I was talking about.
Yes.
But, and quite frankly, I had to learn to do like breathing exercises before. I actually had a doctor who said, just take this pill, you'll be fine. But you don't always want to do that.
Yes.
And I'm like, because there are things like that can help you. But quite frankly, I'm learning the art of meditation. And I started learning this years ago, but I realized that unless you that's one of those things that unless you take it fully on, you don't really get to where you think you're going to get to. You know, I mean, you think that when you start meditating, it becomes like that. It doesn't, you know, it's a process. But I did a few years ago start the breathing process. So anytime I had presentations or things like that, I would start this breathing process. And there was one exercise that talked about, you know, the inhale and exhale. And when you inhale, you build your body up and expand, and then you exhale, and in a sense it makes you feel larger than you are. And that when you're thinking and talking, you keep your arms open and so that you're more confident in what you're saying. And I practiced that when I was actually having to walk around the couture show with the president of Neiman Marcus and discuss, you know, numbers and things like that. And I just did it and I felt so much better in doing that. I did have to practice it a little bit, so I didn't look like, you know, I was walking around like shoulders back like I was crazy, but I did, and it makes a difference. And I guess what I would say to you is, if that is your Achilles heel, there are ways to get over it, and you're going to have to, because life, it's hard to live in a silo, and retail is not possible to live in a silo. So you will have to present. So it's one of those things you have to overcome. And there are many tools out there to help you do it. I like the breathing tool. I like what I read about being able to put those shoulders back and take the air in and breathe out and breathe in your confidence. And it takes, they say 2 minutes. It took me more like 10. And before I was starting. And I think the more you do that, the more you can trigger your body to respond that way. There's a whole science to it that I can't get into, but you know, if you really want to know about it, you can Google it, because Google is your friend. I have realized that. But you can learn to do that, and you can learn to overcome these things. And then I also learned that I would start with smaller presentations. So I wouldn't stand up there and give a 20-minute presentation. I would make sure that I will contribute 5 minutes to this. Or I would ask that it be a recorded presentation, because that way I'm more comfortable on a recorded presentation. But for the most part, you know, just learn to stand up. I also found that it was really funny. We had these conclave presentations where everybody would come to Dallas, and we had all our managers there and the vendors there, and we were presenting all day. New products, showing everybody what was new. I would stand up in front of everybody when they would get together and say something, and I would just do it just to build my confidence. It was ridiculous. Even if I was like, everybody needs to take their seats, please. Let's take our seat. Anything I could do to get up in front of people, just little tiny things so that I could do it, so that when I had to, I wasn't like freaking out. So you have to figure yourself, you have to understand yourself and know, I want to accomplish this. How am I going to do it? And yes, let me take that back. Very few people are born loving to be on a stage and speak to a lot of people. In fact, I think they say that public speaking is one of the greatest fears that anybody it's in the top 3 of all fears, if not like the top 2. But so you're not alone. Just understand that most people are looking at you and they're probably looking at you thinking, oh, they're doing so well. You know, I would be so nervous, you know, that's not it. And you just have to build up your own confidence, but you can't run from the task, because it's always going to be in front of you.